Hi, this is Mark Arnold with Fun Ideas Podcast, and we have a returning guest, which is my friend here, Daniel Coston. He's helped me collaborate on a few different projects, like contributing photographs to our Turtles book that Charles Rosenet and I wrote. But he also does many other projects. Uh, you've been on before talking about The Circle. You've been on before talking about Chad and Jeremy. I think we did a Beach Boys show and things like that. But this time we're talking about the Strawberry Alarm Clock, who, if you've seen Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, or if you've seen Austin Powers, or probably just have any 60s compilation, Incense and Peppermints. It's on there somewhere in any good 60s compilation. But apparently they put out a few more albums than that back in the day, and then a couple more recently, and they're working on a new one, and that's what we're going to talk about. And so, welcome to the show again, Daniel.
Hey, Mark, good to see you again. Yeah, glad to
Good to
be
see
back.
you. I'm just rambling on a la 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 la.
Well, this is
it-
rambling about cool stuff,
yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah.
And I was looking for a guest, and I try to look for new guests, and then sometimes I get repeat guests, and then I said. And then I was actually watching Austin Power for like the 8 billionth time, and there's a scene with this music playing, and I go, "Oh, that's right. Coston is working with Strawberry Alarm Clock. I should talk to him about that." So anyway, that's where that came from. So here we are. So
Oh, well, I'll tell you how I came to work with the band.
okay.
So I met George Bennell, the longstanding bass player and guitarist, through our good friend Plastic EP.
Mm.
Plastic and I did a couple of interviews with George. And after the second one, I wrote George and said, "Hey, can we just you and I talk?" Just because I knew it was something that I thought Goldmine would be interested in, and I could, take it to a couple other places. So he and I talked for like 2 to 4 hours over a couple conversations. And during the second interview, he was talking about the issues they had had with record labels, particularly Uni, which was their main record label during the '60s. And he says we've never really had a good record deal. He says you know more about record deals than we do. Can you get us a record deal? And you can, if you listen to them, you can kind of hear this momentary, it's like my brain changing from writer brain to producer brain. It sounds
Right.
like a CD changer, sadly. Um, but there you are. I said, well, yeah, actually, and I kind of took it as a personal challenge. I said, okay, yeah, I think I can make this happen. Well, the obvious place to start was Big Stir Records, who I worked with on the Circle album. I also contributed to the new Sponge Tones album that came out this year. And I wrote him a nice email in the morning and said, "Hey, this is my friend George. This is the guys from Big Stir. I'd love you guys to talk. Strawberry Alarm Clock has been working on a new album for some time. It's great. They have new singles ready to go." I thought, okay, well, we'll talk sometime today or this week. By the end of the day, Big Stir had verbally committed to signing the alarm clock.
Oh.
So I wrote George later. I said, "You never get signed in a day, but it just happened." So kind of amazing. I actually almost forgot that I actually got a commitment to do an exhibition of my work the same day. I was so excited for George and the band. Like, wow, this is really going to happen. Okay, cool. Oh yeah, I got stuff happening today too. Um, so through there, I then started to help the band put together visuals. I haven't photographed them yet. Hopefully that will happen soon. But they would send me artwork or photos and say, this is what we want our next single to be, our next single artwork. And I've really kind of helped them in terms of visuals so far and also guide them discussing things with a label. This is all really new to them. You think about uni and their other experiences, it was just always somebody else handled it for them, and they weren't always happy with that
Mhm.
for a variety of reasons. So it's really kind of been fun to steer them towards this, new dawn, if you will, with this forthcoming record, which is just about done.
All right, very good. Now, before we talk about the new record, let's go back through time.
Oh yeah.
60 years ago, I'm sure. Um, how did the Strawberry Alarm Clock form, and how did they get set up and established with Uni Records in the first place?
Uh, it was my understanding, according to George, they were all friends through high school.
Mhm.
They were a lot of them were working together at I think at a Whole Food store or something like that, and that was the initial collection of musicians. They were working with I think it was Frank Holmes and then Bill Slay over a variety of singles. And one of the first songs that they put together was Incense and Peppermints. It wasn't called that originally. Originally, it was a an instrumental.
Hmm.
They were going to read actually what became the B side of Incense, Birdman of Alcatraz. That was going to be the A side, and they were going to put Incense on the B side. They thought, well, maybe let's put some lyrics to this, and they reached out to John Carter. He sends them the lyrics on a 2-track tape, and then they spend a night in the studio trying out everybody in the band to do a vocal. Nothing works. So this kid who was in another band that Frank was producing, and I'm blanking on his name at the second, Greg Munford. Greg Munford.
Okay, I was gonna say.
He says, "Oh, I'll have a go." And they were like, "That's great. This is it. Do you want to join our band?" "No, I've got my own thing. Besides, this will just be a single anyway. No, nothing will come of this."
Mm,
They get the single signed to Uni Records, and then everything just kind of goes ballistic.
mm,
And much like the Left Bank, well, I've also worked a lot with.
yeah.
There's a story before success, and then there's a story after success.
Now, where was all this taking place? Is this all LA or?
All at LA, I'm blanking on the town. It's not LA, but it's near LA. And they were all in high school or about to graduate from high school. So one of my favorite stories about, I think they all graduated from high school largely in June of '67.
Hmm.
And George has told me, he says, when you're finish high school, you say, what am I going to do? I'm going to college. I'm going to take a gap year. It's like, we went on tour with the Beach Boys. And we proceeded to do two tours for the Beach Boys through '67 and '68.
Hmm.
And yeah, these were kids. I mean, a lot of the music that we love, and like you forget how young these
Yeah.
folks were.
So,
And but they were just riding the wave. And as they were then started working on more songs, the lineup started changing. Gary LeVitro, who was the original bass player, gets pushed out by Randy Seal, who had just joined on drums. George Gunnell, who was the original drummer, he leaves the band after the recording of Incense because his girlfriend at the time wants him to get a real job. And he went to work at McDonald's. True story.
all right.
He has since joined the band. He's in the current lineup. And um, after Gary LeVitro gets demoted to road manager and then fired, they get George Bennell, who had been playing with Randy in another band called The Sixpence. George brings in a whole bunch of songs to that first album.
Hmm.
And the line, the line, and again, it was a constantly changing lineup. There was multiple instruments played, multi instrumental. One thing I discovered in talking to George about the various singles of the alarm clock was they would switch between guitar and bass.
Hmm.
If George wrote the song, he would play bass. If Ed King wrote or co-wrote the song, he played bass. So
Interesting.
they really could just swap off instruments and just whoever brought the song in, like, okay, I'll play this, you play this, and go.
Okay.
So kind of amazing.
So, who actually got them onto Uni? I mean, did the band go, or did somebody discover them? How did that work again? I'm
I
sorry.
think it was the producer and manager,
Okay.
Bill Holmes, Frank Slay. I believe they went to uni,
Hmm.
and mostly, I forgot this. I should have done a little more research again this morning
That's
on
okay.
this. Um, Basically, it was signed originally through a local
Excuse me.
label in
Hmm.
California. It gets picked up by record labels. Then Uni steps in.
Okay.
That's my understanding, and I will have
Okay.
to go back and see what the original label was. But it
Okay.
was one of those where it started getting airplay. It's
Yeah.
1967. Things are happening. Uni steps in and sees an opportunity, and then really gets behind the record. And suddenly,
Hmm.
within a matter of a few months, it goes to a number. I think actually it was a number one.
Right.
So pretty much, and you think, oh, Summer of Love, and that was hit. I think it was number one in the November December '67,
Right.
which means that through summer into fall,
Hmm.
they're pushing this record like crazy.
Hmm. More Uni question. So is Uni? I know it's part of Universal Studios, but it certainly became a bigger label later with signing like Elton John and Neil Diamond and things like that. But I mean, were they kind of a known quantity, or is this like the early acquisition, so it didn't really matter too much? It was just like almost being on just like a minor nothing label in a certain respect when that happened, right?
We forget that it was a big deal sign with any label,
Yeah, yeah,
or a small label with major label distribution. It was Smash, which released the Left Bank and everything. They were a division of Mercury,
right.
so it's a lot of it was and a lot of those records back then were thrown out there like, okay, maybe somebody will pick this up, maybe some DJ will start playing this.
Yeah,
They were throwing records to the wind, and this was
right.
a record that caught really big, and then what happened was, so the short story on Incense was Ed King and Mark Whites actually wrote the music to Incense.
Mm-hmm.
Through a series of circumstances, they were not credited. And
Hmm.
John Carter and his other lyricists are only credited on the label. And then try to make the band happy, they said, okay, well, you'll get the credit for the next single, which is Tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that was it was not Tomorrow, which they had just written, was not on the debut album, which
Mm-hmm.
was already out, and it would later eventually be on the second album, which is out months later. So then your follow-up single, which I think got to the top 20 Tomorrow. It's not on the album that you're still promoting, and eventually will be on an album that you won't release for another 6 to 8 months, which really didn't do the band any favors in terms of
Yeah.
momentum post Incense.
Now, my exposure to this group is mainly this song and this first album.
Mhm.
I know they did other stuff, and we'll talk about that, but it's like, to me, the album kind of strikes me a bit like Odyssey and Oracle by the Zombies, where it's like almost every track is perfect, and it's like, why did they not consider a second single off the first album? Just because that would be a good little stopgap measure to just put it out and then just re-promote the album.
And I think that's unique. That's purely unique.
Yeah,
They saw at that point, even though they were promoting the album, they saw the Alarm Clock as more of a singles band. So okay,
interesting.
let's get the next single out there, and then okay,
Yeah.
that doesn't work. We'll push another single. But yeah, the band was really disappointed that because there's several songs on the first album that could be another single,
hmm
and Uni just bypassed all of it
hmm
entirely.
Now, their later albums, how many did they do over the years, or at least back in the day in the 60s?
I think ultimately like five to six.
Okay.
And by the late 60s, because of management, a lot of the band members leave.
Mm,
Eventually you get someone like Paul Marshall in. He's the bass player and singer on he's with them on Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. He's with them
hmm
for a couple of records. Paul was actually the first person I met that was a alarm clock alum. He's been in a fantastic band for years called Icy Hawks in LA that played Charlotte for years. So it was like, wait, you're the guy from the alarm clock. So there's various iterations. I mean, by the third, fourth album, you start to see changes in lineups, and obviously they're getting older. They
hmm
have frustrations with the label and management, and things start changing. And eventually, it kind of peters out in the early 70s. Now, I'll mention is that there was a point in 70, I believe around 71, there was basically the management they left behind would send another version of the alarm clock out, and they're just milking that name dry. So Ed King and a bunch of the other original members went out to reestablish the name. When they did a show in Florida, they met a band called Leonard Skinner,
Yeah.
and that's how Ed met Leonard Skinner. Stayed in touch and eventually joined them a few years later.
Hmm. Okay. Uh, it sounds almost like a Fleetwood Mac story where, like in the early 70s, they put out a different Fleetwood Mac than what was the real
Yes.
Fleetwood Mac.
Yeah.
Was this similar to that?
Somewhat, and actually, to your Fleetwood Mac story, I've since learned that originally that lineup was supposed to be include Fleetwood,
hmm
and he got cold feet and left. So basically, the guys who thought, "Hey, we're going to join Mick Fleetwood, be Fleetwood Mac," they show up in America, and there's no original members, and they knew from the start that they were not going to be liked. So it's a shame. A lot of them went on to really strong careers, but some of them never talked about that experience again. So
Right.
yeah, it was. I when there is a band that gets that big that
Yeah.
quickly, there's always people around saying, "Okay, well, it's not like they're trying to rip people off, but people start saying, well, this is my band, or this is, like management says, I'm really this. The producer says, no, we're really this organization, not the musicians, and sometimes the musicians all claim the name. So it's you know, and also you've got people who are literally teaching themselves the music business
Hmm.
in the 1960s as you go along. So you find these factions somehow, some way, and that's the amazing thing about working with the guys now, is that there's five original members. There's five guys who are on that first album in this current lineup. You
Hmm.
know, that's very unheard of, but they went through all this. They went through all this together at various times, various iterations, and the music has somehow brought them back together.
Hmm. Now, I assume you've heard the later albums and stuff. Are they the same type of psychedelia, or did they do what 60s groups tended to do, is kind of progress and change and morph and all
There,
that stuff?
their ideas have changed. You know, some will know that Steve Bartek has been a longtime member and producer of Oingo Boingo. Boingo. So you hear some of that in the newer Steve's work. They're all very accomplished and have
Hmm.
actually, in some ways, become better musicians and more understanding. A number of them play in an organization called the Tribe.
Hmm.
It's a conglomeration of musicians of the '60s who just want to play and push each other. You know, create new music. Um, I've really enjoyed the music that they've written for this new record. It really,
Hmm.
it's songs that, while it's obviously still rooted in the 60s, you can
Hmm.
tell it's still the Strawberry Alarm Clock, but this is the experience of people 50, 55 years later, which
Okay.
is interesting. But all the Alarm Clock records are interesting. Obviously, some are better known than others, but
Hmm.
they all have their own nuggets. They all have their own really interesting songs. Even the band's last album, Wake Where You Are, which is 2012, it has a Seeds cover, it has some new stuff, and then it has some reimagining of their better known songs.
Hmm.
This new record doesn't have any reimaginings. I think there is one older song that they're redoing, but
Hmm.
it's completely different. And there's a couple of covers of some known artists on this that are, and again, they've taken these songs and turned them completely upside down.
Hmm.
So it's, um, if you listen to the new single, which is out this weekend as we're talking, it's called Blow Your Mind.
Hmm.
And listen to also the first single, Monster is back with White Light. I refer to as modern psychedelia. You
Hmm.
know, this is people who, grew up through those psychedelic sounds and, pushing that and not even reimagining it. This is just where these musicians are all these years later.
Hmm. What, if you know, what prompts a group such as this to put out new material? I mean, there's no real monetary incentive necessarily. I mean, yeah, I guess you get some record sales, but you're certainly not going to out of the blue have a overnight hit. I hope you do with the new one, but it's
Mhm.
realistically it's just nostalgia. It's like, and hey, great, the guys are getting together to get. So what gets them up in the morning and say, I'm gonna write songs and hopefully we'll get a new album. Let's get a new album deal. Let's get it out.
I think for them, it's love of the music. I
Okay.
mean, I also think the experiences they had, especially post Incense, I think they've really, I mean, they've all been on this journey together. But I also think it's a way of reclaiming their own legacy. I don't even
Right.
know if they really need to reclaim it, but it's sort of like say, this is us. This is us all these years later. And, there's four or five writers in the band. And I will tell you that working with them, they are a genuine collective. They pride themselves on being a collective. They all
Good.
have a say. They all have to say yes. And if you're organizing that by email, that's some work
Yeah.
from this end. But they're all invested.
Yeah.
One of my favorite phrases is "You're doing this or you're not," and they're doing this,
Yeah.
and they really feel like they still have something to say. And I've been really excited about this new material. In many ways, I think it's their best material since the '60s.
Okay.
So I think it's genuinely, yeah, we still want to do this, and we like what we're creating now.
Yeah. I mean, I like it when people put out new material. It's like it to me it makes it a little more viable than just being that oldies band that's been around for 50 years and they're just churning out the same old hits. It's like certainly that's got to get a little dull for the band members after a while. Of course they have to play the big hit, every time, but I'm sure if they write something of good caliber, let's put that in there and weave that into the thing, and hopefully get some interest, and then yeah, put out an album. So
And also, I think it's look at that band. Yeah, everybody knows Incense and Peppermints, but then you talk to them, they're as proud about Tomorrow and Barefoot in Baltimore and Pretty Song from Psych Out and all these other songs. It's like a
hmm
lot of my conversations with George haven't been about Incense. They've been about the other songs and the other albums and what they were trying to do. And they
hmm
were very serious about their harmonies. They
hmm
brought in and I'm going to blank on the person they brought in to help organize harmonies. They had a actual vocal coach who would have them work out their parts. This
hmm
is not just, hey man, let's just show up and whoever sings sings. They realized during the making of the first album, like we all sing, we can do something that no other band has. And
Yeah.
that is, that's one of the really interesting qualities about the alarm clock is you literally are merging psychedelic rock and these other Western Eastern influences with basically, harmony singing akin to the association and
hmm
what people would associate more with harmony pop and production pop.
Right.
So, again, it all makes for a very unique situation, and it still does.
hmm Yeah, I'm sure this is just things that happened, but do you know the story of how they got involved with the couple films they did, film appearances, Beyond the Valley
Yes.
of the Dolls and those?
Psych Out, actually, Dick Clark came to them
Oh, okay.
um, and said, he showed them the movie and said, this is what we have. And originally wanted music for another scene. And then they got to the wedding scene, and uh, George can also tell you the story. And you can find my interview with George over at Goldmine Magazine,
hmm
goldminemag.com. Thank you very much. And they went, "Oh, what about that? What about that?" And that became Pretty Song from Psych Out. So that was purely, they literally came to the alarm clock and said, "Hey, can you do this?" With Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, it's a little more complicated. I believe Roger Ebert was a huge fan.
Yeah.
I should mention too that the alarm clock reunited to play at Roger Ebert's request. Robert's kind of birthday, sadly going away party. He was dying with cancer at the time,
Right.
and the band has spoken highly about, that Roger requested us to come and play and took care of us for the whole week and said it was amazing. And so at that point the band came in and not only did new material, they played Incense. And yeah, and Paul Marshall told me one point, he says that set was a party. He said they had a very good time shooting those scenes.
hmm That's cool. Um, what else can I ask about that? Well, they had long gaps. Obviously, you can't keep the momentum up. But was there, if you don't have hit records along the way necessarily, but were there reasons for them to break up at various times along the way? Was there any infighting, or they just let's call this a day for a while,
It was management, and they fell out because management wasn't paying them.
Okay.
And a couple of them actually came back, and once other members had left, came because the manager called them and said, we got this tour, we got, I really need you guys. And a couple of them came back and did the tour, and the manager didn't pay them again. Um, yeah, the stories are really, they were, these were kids on the road, and they didn't know that, what was going on. Um, Elsewhere, out of their reach. But George has very specifically said to me, he's like, we never fell out with each other. We fell out with management and label.
Okay.
And and they stayed in touch, and then eventually, through the 70s and 80s, started, meeting up again and wanting to reform the alarm clock.
Yeah. Because you always think of every group breaking up because of infighting with the band members and like, "Arr!" But it's not
Yeah.
necessarily the case. So,
And no, it was never the case. Now I've worked with those bands, not many things, but really with the alarm clock was just they've, management and label and being young and going, God, we're out again for how many dates, and are we going to get paid at all for this?
no.
So yeah.
Now, either verify or confirm or elaborate on these couple stories that I just kind of read about before, So there was one point in their career, I think it might have been in the 80s or something, that they hadn't been together in a while. And so some promoter or something advertised the Strawberry Alarm Clock appearance and didn't really have any band members set up or anything. And then a couple of them actually showed up because they saw it in the paper. Is there some truth to that?
I believe there is, yes.
Okay.
And that happened a lot. Some will remember that there was a promoter who was fooled into thinking he'd gotten Hugh Grundy from the Zombies to form a new Zombies,
Uh-huh.
and it was not Hugh. It was not the Zombies. That did happen. That 20 once people started getting interested in the late '60s, somebody, oh, I'll just put this out, and maybe they thought they had some original members said and they didn't. But I do believe that there was a show where it was advertised as a Strawberry Alarm Clock, and I will have to ask George specifically about that. But
Okay.
I know this happened multiple times during the '70s and '80s.
Yeah. I would say it seems like it would happen to a group like this where kind of the names are not John, Paul, George, Ringo. They're pretty anonymous that
Mhm.
anybody could be in the Strawberry Alarm Clock, which
Well,
go ahead.
and that is the issue sometimes with a collective or a group where it's like, oh, okay, I know the songs, but I don't know the front man. It's like, I mean, let's take the Left Bank for instance.
Mm,
Like, we would know the names Michael Brown or Steve Martin,
mm,
but a lot of people didn't know. They might not know, like, okay, well, this iteration has these members. If it goes out as this, it's only just going to be this person. So with the alarm clock, there's again a number of guys who were in the band at different times. Although there is a core of 6 to 8 people who can say they would genuinely a member of the Strawberry Alarm Clock during that time.
right. Hmm.
So yeah, it's a little harder sometimes when again when you're not recognizable. Again, most people beyond us know the songs; they may not know the people behind them.
Yeah. Interestingly, one of the more famous people that I read about that was in the group for a time, I don't think he was ever on any of their records, but he's known for being on the Waltons as John Walmsley. How did he was only a couple years, but how did he kind of get with the band at that time? Do you know anything about
I'm
that?
gonna do a little more research on that period. There was a point where a lot of the original members had left. Ed and Mark kind of continued on with different versions of the band, and there a lot of times they were still going out on the road trying to keep the name going, and they needed people to get on the road. I think that's that early '70s period. I will need to do a little more research about that.
Okay.
I know somewhere around '74, '75, George actually worked as a car salesman and did pretty well actually because people found out that he was an original member of the Strawberry Alarm Clock and wanted to buy cars from him.
Wow.
So, true story. So, yeah, that part I will have to. And there were a number of musicians who played with. Maybe they didn't record, but they went out as part of the touring, group
Yeah.
at various times. So I think it's at 71 to 73 or 70 73 period.
Hmm. Okay, so let's talk a little more about the new album then. You basically said how you got involved, but I mean, were they writing songs for quite a while? You said the last album was 2012, so I guess they just kept writing, and if something comes along, we'll do it, or what was the story on how they got to this point?
Really, after the album came out in 2012, they've been doing sporadic shows here and there. They talk to each other pretty much every week via Zoom,
Hmm.
and they were like, "Okay, you've got this, you got that," and again, no real timeline. Just like, "Hey, what about this?" Or there's a couple songs in this new album which were started as something they were doing separately or
Hmm.
with one or two members, and then they brought into the group.
Hmm.
So everybody's contributing, and some songs that they bring into the group, what they've been recording over the last year has been, okay, we're going to put this together for the new Strawberry Alarm Clock album.
Hmm.
When they started working on the songs for this mid 2010s, it was like, hey, I've got this, I've got this. Okay, well, can I get you to play on this record? And that is another thing of the alarm clock. It's not like Birds, the Bees, and the Monkeys, where one member and a bunch of other people. Their rule
Yeah.
is we're all playing with this on this, or most of us are playing on this. Otherwise, it's not an alarm clock song.
Hmm.
So they, kind of like at their own speed, been introducing songs. Some of the songs on this new album are brand new. Some are 10, 15 years old.
Okay.
But it's all, again, it's all new material and all new recordings.
Hmm.
And that's also been the nice thing about introducing the Big Stir was they said, oh, wait, we really have a record label that's really going to release our singles. And now we have to prepare and finish the album. So, again, my involvement with this is just more I actually, if you see my credits, anything related to the alarm clock, I always credit myself with Vibes, which comes from Mal Evans' credits on John Lennon records. I
Hmm.
bring Vibes. I'm the one, the benevolent adult in the corner via email. It says, okay, like our deadline's Friday for this. Let me get you guys to agree on this, and we'll get this done and get this out. So I haven't had any input on the music, and
Okay.
that's all them. And I want them, that's I think they're really enjoying all these years later. And again, I can't completely speak for the guys, but
Yeah.
my feeling and what the impression I've gotten is they really enjoyed this part of the ride because they're the ones creating the music. They're the ones creating what they want to create,
Mhm.
and then they can this when this record comes out, they can really say this is us and this is us now.
Right. Do they manage themselves? Is that how that works? Or okay, I got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So, um, and then, as far as if a song is like 10 or 15 years old, is it just had they recorded a demo at some point just amateurishly or something like that, just so they have a copy of it just to
They,
get it
they all have
down, as it were?
They all have a home studio. Steve has his studio. A
Okay.
number of them have their own recording setup, so they'll use each other's. And a lot of it's just throwing ideas back and forth to each other.
Hmm.
I have this. I like this. Well, what if you played on this? And it really is amazing. These guys are. Um, it is weird to think that these guys are actually the same age as my parents, or they're about. But they are like kids. They're still like teenagers going, "Hey, I got this song. Like, hey,
Yeah.
what about this?" And not it's. I think they're also enjoying not having to push an album out every 6 months to a year.
Right.
That is the thing we forget. Much as we love the '60s and the amazing thing where you had to have a record every year, every 6 months,
I can't believe that.
for 2 to 4
Yeah.
singles a year. It's
Yeah.
like that's not for everybody. It wasn't even really for everybody back then. So I
Yeah.
think they're enjoying having their own speed and time to create something. And that's the other thing too is they all have to agree on it.
Mm.
If you hear an alarm clock song, they've all said yes, this is an alarm clock song, and we want to push this forward.
So how many songs are ending up on the album then?
I believe there's at least 14.
Oh, okay. Well,
I know there's
eh,
like 14 in in the running right now.
okay. And I assume they have some that didn't make the cut, right?
I think there's a
Um,
one or two. There's
yeah.
always something else they're working on, and that's
Okay.
something that down the road, once we get this record out, then I may go back to them and say, okay, what else would you like to do down the road? Or maybe we
Okay.
do an additional release. A lot of it really now is just focusing on, they just did a recording session last week as we're talking. I know they're adding strings
Hmm.
to some songs that I'm really excited about.
Hmm.
And then in the coming few several weeks, they will mix those songs, and then once they declare the album done, then we will start working on the artwork and kind of how. And I will leave that to them in terms of the running order and how they want. And again, they do their own mastering as well.
Right.
So this
Okay.
is very much their creation. And then I'll
Um,
I'll come in and say, okay, let's do this for the visuals. And I'm hoping to be out there, in the coming weeks to do some pictures, around this release.
hmm And it's always so weird today on how things are released. I mean, is it going to be released in all the traditional formats or
And
um
that is the great thing about Big Stir is they really go all in. They have their contacts with radio stations, real
mm,
and online, and so they now as this conversation they have released the two singles, and
yeah.
then there should be a third single released next year
Mm,
ahead of the album, and we have some target dates of when we'd like to get the album released depending on when the album is done.
Okay.
So again, that will be determined over the next several weeks.
Now,
So
when you
I'm
say
sure I'll get. I'm sure I'll get a few emails about that. Yeah.
now, when you say singles, is this a physical release or is it, because single has the, connotation of, for me, at
Mhm.
45, I'm holding in my hands, but nowadays it's like, oh yeah, it's a video we put on YouTube. That's our single, and it's like,
It,
yeah. So they
it's
have
a
a,
dig-
a physical release. Yeah.
it's a digital release,
Hmm.
but you can see both the artwork for both singles
Okay.
on BigStarRecords.com, and it will be promoted like a physical release. The band actually did their own video for
Oh,
Monster,
okay. Okay.
which you can find online,
Hmm.
and I'll have to see if there is a video coming for Blow Your Mind.
Okay.
That's something in the next run of conversations.
Okay. And then those songs are supposed to be on this album as well.
Correct.
B-sides too, or the B-sides are unique to the singles?
Right now, the B-sides will be on the record as well.
Okay. Just curious.
But I'm leaving the band open to surprising me with.
Right.
I like that too, where you put on a B-side that's completely separate from the album itself. That was something we thought about doing with the Circle album, but it was just we had so many songs in the running, but they were at that point we'd been working on the album for so long, we knew what was going to be on the album, so it was like, oh no, okay, you know, we had additional songs, but it was easier to go ahead with what we finished and what the band believed in. That's something that wasn't on the album.
Mm-hmm. Now, is the band touring at this time while they're making this album? They do both, or do they take a break? Or
They do kind of sporadic one-off shows here and there. They do have a show at the Whiskey A Go Go on February 29th,
okay.
which originally they were calling this show an album release, but now we're referring to it as an album preview. So you actually go and hear the new songs that this forthcoming album live on stage, some of which they've been playing for a few years.
Hmm.
So it's going to be a really, and it's the whiskey. It's like
Right.
it's the alarm clock at the Whiskey A Go Go. I mean, there you go. I
Hmm.
will say the whiskey's been really good in the last year, and they've been for a number of years, but over the last year especially, they've been wanting to bring back the bands who made them the whiskey in the '60s. They, brought back the current iteration of Love with Johnny Eccles, and they always make space for the alarm clock because
Hmm.
they know, what that band meant to the scene in 1967.
Right. And then when the album's released in full, are they going to do like a more major tour, or how will that work?
I think they'll still do sporadic one-off shows here and there.
Okay.
Actually, a venue here in Charlotte approached me yesterday about
Hmm.
booking the band. And it's not for just $500. It's
Okay.
not your weekend gig rate. But I think if the band is able to string together some dates, I would love to see them play New York again. I definitely would love to.
Yeah.
I'm biased. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Yeah.
I would love to see them play the East Coast.
Yeah.
I'd love to see them play other places. So
Yeah.
I think is something that once the album is done, the band can start to see, what the interest is and see about playing some more shows.
Okay. When they do play, where do they generally play? In
California,
California? Okay.
California. They played
So,
various
okay.
festivals. If you look at their website, you can kind of see where they've played over the last several years. And, it's, I have to admit, I would love to be at several of those shows myself. And, it's, from this end of the glass, it's, you think, oh, wow, the California going out and these crazy festivals or the whiskey and seeing those bands, and they're still playing those kind of festivals all these years later.
Yeah.
It's like set up in a field, like-minded groups, and
Yeah.
and I think there's like three or four bands that are share the influence of the alarm clock that are opening for them at the whiskey in
Okay.
February. So yeah, you can check their website, check their Facebook page, and please, if you see they're playing anywhere, go see them.
Okay. Now they're generally a headliner. They're not like part of a package tour ever. Okay.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. Would they ever
And that's something
consider that like a Happy Together tour, or no, they're just not
I
in
don't
there?
know if they've ever been approached.
Yeah.
That touring, and some will know that the Happy Together tour. Basically, you're shuttled on a bus
Yeah.
for 2-3 months, and that's not for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think the Alarm Clock, much like some other groups I've worked with, don't want to rush out there and do 2-4 songs and call it a night. They
Yeah.
want to play their songs.
Fair
And
enough.
they want to play, their material, especially when you've been doing this 50, 55 years.
Yeah.
So, I think that's that again. I love the Happy Together tour. I've seen a lot of great acts along the way. I'm curious to see where that goes the next couple of years.
Mhm.
But that's not for everybody, and I don't think that's for. I don't think that's meant for the what the alarm clock wants to do.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And yeah, I agree with you. Some bands like to do that. Some bands, don't want to do that. Ugh. And yeah, I could see a different taste for different people. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Also, tours like that, they prefer having one original member or someone who represents them or the group that they were in.
Hmm.
That's not the alarm clock. There's five guys who have been, in and out of this band now for 60 years. And you can't cut out one or two of them and go and put the rest on a package tour. So there is that.
Yeah. Okay. Um, Now on the next step on the album where you're saying you're putting together the photographs, are you taking the photographs and are you the one designing it or are they designing it and you're just following their lead?
I'm hoping to take the pictures for this. I do want to shout out their longtime friend and photographer, Laura Calcaterra, who's taken the pictures that you currently see on the website. She's been photographing them for years and done a really good job. They knew I wanted to, photograph them ahead of this record, but I've worked with a number of bands over the years where band gets a certain amount of famous, and then other people come and say, "Oh, you should work with this person instead."
Yeah.
I told Laura that I didn't want to do that to her. So
Hmm.
while I still want to photograph the band and hopefully they will be used in this record, I've really tried to promote her and her work because she's put the time in. She's been working with this band a very long time.
Hmm.
So I could see some sort of combination being worked out. So I think the artwork will be worked out with myself and the band, and I'm hoping to bring in my good friend Sean Lynch, who lives here in Charlotte. Some will know he's also the bass player of the Mitch Easter Band,
Yeah.
and Sean helped me design the Circle album. He also just helped me design the vinyl version of the Circle's Revival album, which we're hoping to put out on Big Stir
Hmm.
later this year, in 26, ahead of the band's 60th anniversary.
Yeah.
And so this new single, Blow Your Mind, this was all myself and Sean working with all six members of the band to create a visual image for the Blow Your Mind cover. So it will be me and Sean working with the band.
Okay. And is there any particular theming you like to get in, like the psychedelia or anything like that, or is it vary from project to project?
Varies project to
Okay.
project.
Okay.
One thing Sean and I are very aware of is like, we want the visuals to speak for themselves. And it's very,
Yeah.
especially when you're now dealing with second, third generation designers, they want to go, oh yeah, Dayglow, 60s, psychedelia. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's not always right.
Right.
That was one thing that I was aware of as we
Yeah.
continued with the artwork for the Circle singles. And I actually ended up designing the covers for the second and third singles
Yeah.
because I was like, okay, yeah, this is a 60s band, but let's not overdo the 60s band.
Right.
And let's find a visual and a medium that complements the music without hitting you with the certain 60s psychedelic visual tropes over your head.
Right.
So I would say that if you're lucky, the project tells you.
Yeah.
It says this is what it is. This is what it feels like.
Yeah.
The great thing, like the Circle album Revival, Sean came to me and said, "Can I design this like a '60s Columbia album?"
Yeah.
Heck yes, bring it, go for it.
Yeah.
And that was the template that we used. Again, '60s design, but not '60s design.
Right.
So it's finding that place that works and brings you in and doesn't push you away.
Yeah.
Let's say.
Well, one I thought worked well, and they carried the theming through singles and videos and everything. Was the Monkees on their Good Times album 10 years ago? They had these little drawings of guitars and other things, in the background, and it just was like, and they used the same typography throughout everything. So it was like this is this project, and it seemed to work for what they did.
I have to say, and I was talking about this with someone this week, that I got to watch the Monkees' Good Times album kind of get built from the ground up from his distance. I've been longtime friends with Andrew Sandoval.
Mm-hmm.
While I couldn't be involved in the Monkees' album for a variety of reasons, and I wasn't doing any producing work at that point, I
Hmm.
watched how they put that album together piece by piece, and then worked on the visuals, worked on presenting it, and it shouldn't surprise me within a year or two I was starting to produce records because you really, for me, I caught the bug of again, this is the extension of me being a writer and photographer for many years, working
Yeah.
with all these bands. And it was like, okay, what if we did this? What if we worked on this and then built this to that? So, I dare say that the Monkees' "Good Times" album is a big reason why I've gotten involved as a producer the
Mhm.
last 10 years. And yeah, but that's a lot of people taking an initial idea and building it and say, okay, this works for us, without basically, going, oh God, they're overdoing the '60s thing.
Right, right. And I've seen that happen with other groups where they overdo it to the point where it doesn't even look like something new. It just looks like some rehash from the past. Like I'd be really sad if they did this same album cover, just having it with the old guys sitting there instead. It's like, no, do something semi-fresh at least,
Mhm.
especially if you're writing new material. So, yeah.
That's one thing we're gonna have to work out again. I've said, you guys focus on getting the music done. Obviously, the music comes first.
Yeah.
So once they've done that, then they and I will start discussing ideas. And I want to hear, Mark Weitz is very involved in the band's visuals, and they all, they all bring ideas to the table. So I'm anxious to see where they are, and then what we can do to tell people this is where the alarm clock is.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Very cool. Now, when you did get into producing, what was your first project? Was it the Left Bank or was it something else? I forgot which
It
one you
was
worked on.
other things. It
Oh.
was kind of a series of circumstances. Went to see a friend of mine's daughter that was playing at a local pizza parlor here in
Mhm.
town, and she and her parents had raised some money through a GoFundMe to record an album, but the producer they're going to work with had basically skipped town.
Mhm.
And her mom was telling me this, and I said, "Give me a day." I mean, I literally was surprising myself as I said this. Give me a day, and I'll take care of this, because something just got a hold of me and said, "You should do this." So I called a friend
Yeah.
of mine, Chris Gargis, who many will know was a producer here in town. We
Hmm.
lost 3 years ago. Sponge Tone's longtime drummer. And I said, Chris, I think I got something I want to work with you on. And Chris and I built that album up from the start, and it's a great album. You can still find it out there under the name Maya Beth Atkins.
Yeah.
And within a year, I had a day off, and that's I ever have a day off here in Charlotte. And I drove 10 hours to see the Circle in Van Wert, Ohio, which is as remote as it sounds. And after meeting the band and photographing them, I originally was like, oh, I'm going to pitch a book to them. And what kept coming back to me was, no, you need to oversee an album. You
Hmm.
need to make the album that maybe not quite would have been the album they would have made in '68, '69, but what would happen if you got to make one more album with the
Right.
Circle?
Hmm.
Let's not let the Circle's history end on basically a soundtrack for a softcore film. So, greatest soundtrack that it is. I love the Mink
Yeah.
soundtrack. It's
Yeah.
some of my favorite
Uh,
Circle material.
yeah.
And that's the pitch then took back to the Circle and said, "What if you got to make the album you didn't get to make in '68?" And that was
Hmm.
the jumping point. And then as I started working on that, Cheryl Pavelski of Omnivore called me and said, "We want to do some Left Bank releases."
Okay.
And
That's
got involved with that.
okay. And I guess every producing job is different, but basically you're like the director of a film, just kind of making sure this goes smoothly, this goes smoothly, this goes smoothly.
It
Yeah.
varies. You're either director, the Circle. I was the guy who handled everything. I was the one
Mm.
who, obviously Don and then like Loskamp, Pat McLaughlin, they were all coming in with their songs, but I was the one saying, "That's good. I like this. Let's do more work with that." So it's kind of it's being the benevolent director, if you
Okay.
will,
Okay.
with with the Left Bank. A lot of the Left Bank material were things from my collection that I
Right.
would bring to the label and say, "What about this? Let me reach out to the estates. Let's get a deal done with that." And
Okay.
that was, that's 3, 4 different estates there. Like with Chad and Jeremy, again, I wouldn't even call that as a director. I've been more archivist and organizer as we've been
Mm.
digitizing, preserving, and basically diving into Chad's archives to see what's there. And I will tell you, you'll start to see those releases coming out in the next year or so. That is
Okay.
an amazing, endless dive.
Hmm.
But I would say sometimes you're the guys pushing the stone along, and sometimes you're basically the gardener from the secret garden. You're the guy who's getting off the car and go, okay,
Yeah.
let's keep this garden moving. Let's make sure it's things aren't wilting. So
Yeah.
yeah, every project is different.
Yeah.
I totally fallen in love with it. You know, again, much like music, being a photographer, music business, don't do this for the money.
Yeah.
Don't do this thinking you're going to make gobs of money or, even tens of dollars. Do this because you believe in a project and you really want to see it through to completion. I will
Yeah.
shout out, because I can, my production work on the Becky's reissue,
Oh
which
yeah,
was
that's great. We talked
Michael
about that
Brown.
too.
Yes, Michael Brown's last major label release. I mean, that
Mhm.
was also going to the surviving musicians and saying, I love this record. I want to make this happen, and getting them on board, and then having them completely come over to my side and say, we will do whatever promotion you want us to do. We will do whatever you want because we love this project.
Yeah.
And I did the liner notes for that release as well. And because I mean, I always say I'm doing this until somebody else shows up who can do this better. Until then, I'm doing this to the best of my abilities because I believe in it. I'm trying to create
Yeah.
things that I've been wanting to see out there for
Right.
years. I think that's any of us who are trying to do this, we're trying to create some cool stuff that we would want to pick up at the record store.
Right. Well, I'm glad you get the opportunities because I wouldn't even know where to begin on, and you encounter these people, which I think helps, of course,
It
through your
does.
photography or whatever, and it's like, um, but for me, it's just, I just sit back from afar like this and go, wow, he got the strawberry alarm clock. Wow, he got the left bank. Wow, he got the circle. How do you do this? Where were these guys? What, you know, but I always think, well, I am doing my one small part to say, well, you did all the hard work of getting everybody together, get the project underway, and blah, 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 and then I'll get you to promote it. So here we go. So that's what my little piece of the puzzle is for you.
And
So
we thank you for that
yeah,
every bit. There's a lot of people who don't know, even despite the singles and great singles that the Alarm Clock are putting out, they won't know about this new iteration until they see your podcast. So
right,
hi,
yeah,
and again, follow me, follow the Strawberry Alarm Clock. There's a lot coming.
yeah.
I will also tell you that there is a special project involving the estates of the Marx Brothers that
Hmm.
I'm involved with that you will learn more about and hopefully in the next couple months through various media sources. Again, um, I'm lucky that some of these things I went out and found, and some of these things found me,
Did,
and
did this one find you, or did you find it? Okay,
they found me.
all right.
It's always amazing when, and to me, I'm just this you know silly kid, upstate New Yorker who's lived in North Carolina for years, um, just wanting to create good stuff. And, again, writer, photographer. And then somebody calls and says, hey, you're doing cool stuff. You want to work on this? And like, yeah, yeah. It's like almost like I'm to this point, I'm still trying to pretend that I kind of sort of know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Uh, I think I do, but
Mhm.
again, that's the young kid in me. That's the fan. That's the person who's looking up at these records. The one who, found Circle albums, at estate sales as a kid, and then suddenly you're working with them. Give or take a few years.
Right.
So yeah, so I'm excited about what's coming in the next year, but the above all goal, of course, is like, okay, let's do this to the best of our abilities.
Hmm.
And trying to carve out time. Some will know I'm also an event photographer. That's kind of what my day-to-day gig here is in Charlotte when I'm not on the road with bands. So it's finding the time to manage it all, but also make sure that the bands don't get short shrift.
Hmm.
They've been through this. They've spent their lifetimes doing this.
Yeah.
Give them everything you got. That's
Hmm.
how I feel.
And I'm sure you're pretty easygoing and understand all this, so you don't give them much pushback on certain things that they say. We have 50 years of experience. I think we know better in the case like this or something. And then you go, okay, fine. Yeah.
It's a conversation. It's a
Yeah.
conversation,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're trying to find like, where do you feel on this? Where do you stand on this? Okay, let's get to that ground, or can you meet me here, and then we can find somewhere that works for all of us.
Right. Um, Apart from the Marx Brothers, any other projects you can kind of hint at or say or
Well, I'll mention that the Circle will be back out in 26. I don't
okay.
know when we're looking at doing the vinyl version of Revival. I'm excited about it because,
Mhm.
I want to have, one more Circle vinyl album in my
Right.
collection. So that's coming out. You will learn more about the Chad and Jeremy projects in the coming weeks. I will
Okay.
tell you.
Okay.
Stand by for news, as Paul Harvey once
Okay.
said. Um, but yeah, that's been some, and there's some other things. There's a few other projects that I've been following or have been in touch with that I would like to see happen in the coming year. I don't know how or if I will be involved, but there's definitely some things
Are they
coming up.
sim without naming names, I guess, is it similar in caliber to this as longtime groups that have been ignored or whatever?
There's a few
Yeah.
that I would love to see get another release.
Yeah.
Someday I hope to get that last Left Bank record out.
Right.
Some you may know that when we were putting together the uh, a revised or basically remastered version of Strangers on a Train with additional tracks that the band recorded in '01 and '02. We found all of their recordings.
Mm-hmm.
Left Bank had made a complete album in
Mm-hmm.
'01, and I spent 20 years wondering if it actually existed, and one night we found it.
Yeah.
That album has not come out yet because of disagreements with the label I was working with at the time and their own wishes.
Yeah.
And I still think I've still like to say to both parties, like, we can get this done.
Yeah.
I'm not going to ever give up on that project.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I literally spent 20 years, looking for that record. I found it. It's here on my desk. It's awesome. Hopefully someday that will find a release.
Yeah.
Again, there's always a few things around, but I also think you also kind of you can't actively search this out too much. You do kind of wait for things to come to you.
Right.
And with a couple of records that are coming out this year, I think that, or my hope is that you'll see a few more things that I'm involved with. And I'm also still working with a number of bands as for photography, both new and archival. I did a bunch of the photos for the new Decoration Day reissue by the Drive-By Truckers. It's
Hmm.
funny to see pictures I took of a band 23 years ago where they were, I will say, not giving me the easiest of times. That she do a whole bunch of pictures in like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then 23 years later, it's showing up on CBS to promote their Late Show appearance. It's just happened. It just
Yeah.
happened 2 weeks ago,
Wow.
and it's cool, but also it's to use a '60s phrase, it's a bit trippy.
Yeah.
You also come to the fact that if you're lucky, these things find homes whenever
Yeah.
they do. It doesn't matter. You can't regret that these things weren't seen sooner. I went through this I did photos for the Wilco Yankee Hotel Foxtrot box set 3 years ago that won 2 Grammys.
Hmm.
Would I have liked you to see these pictures 20 years, 23 years ago? Yes. Am I glad that you're getting to see them now? Yes.
Hmm.
They all, if you're lucky, they all find homes in their own times.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about various projects, and you're under no obligation to entertain these ideas. But
Bring it.
if I had a couple dream projects that came, based on what you said, it's like, um, Ross Bagdasarian is very well known for the Chipmunks.
Yes.
They over his career doing David Seville and other Alfie and Harry and other released names, he put out various songs. There's never, ever, 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 ever been an official compilation of that stuff out on CD. And there's a lot of stuff that was just released on singles and just out. Is something like that a possibility? Because the story I know from doing my Chipmunks book is he sold the rights to everything to EMI back in 1968. So the son doesn't even have the rights to this stuff. So he has no active interest in doing it. So it'd just be someone like yourself or myself that that loves the music of this person I want to see release. Is that something that could be a possibility?
I think it would be EMI or somebody who has access to those archives coming to me or someone else, and I would,
Okay.
you don't, contact me, contact Alec Palau, contact Andrew Sandoval. There's a number of good people out there doing
Yeah.
really good work. But a lot of the labels don't, hopefully there's somebody in there with EMI, whoever owns that work, to say, yeah, okay, I want to get this out. A lot of labels, especially when they're that large a size, they go, well, what's the return? It's
Yeah.
not going to be Beatles Anthology 4 or
No.
this and that, so it's not worth it. But it
Yeah.
means the world to us.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that I will tell you that, I had this conversation with Omnivore last year. There were a couple records that are, now approaching 50-year anniversaries. I would love to release, but they're owned by Universal, and
Mm.
Universal doesn't really want to license a lot of this stuff out. So every label is dealing with their archives differently. A lot of
Yeah.
them, unless it goes viral for whatever reason on TikTok or isn't placed in some video game,
Yeah.
a lot of these larger organizations don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
But what can you do? Fans like us who go and say, I really want, post online. I want to see this released. I want to see this re-released.
Right.
Let people know because they do follow, they do follow fan groups and, postings like, make it a movement. It's going to take time. It's going to take
Right.
some work, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Because people ask me about that because
Mhm.
I wrote Chipmunk's book, and I go, it's stuck in EMI or well, it's UM3 or whatever the company's called now, limbo, you know.
That one
Yeah.
I'm actually going to, so I was making a note of this, so I will definitely have to look
Yeah.
that one up.
Then the other one is this one. Um, is I'm a big fan of Alan Sherman, and for
Yeah.
years on when Dr. Demento would do little write-ups about Alan Sherman, he said that before his death in 1973, Alan Sherman was working on a record of golf stories. Now, I don't know if he recorded anything or wrote anything or performed stand-up or something like that, which would have been very different than his other material because all of his other material was song parodies and the like, you know.
That one I
And
did not. That one I didn't know about, but I do
yeah,
have ways of contacting the family and asking. So
yeah. And
I will inquire about that one.
a few well, they're not really bootleg. A few non Warner Brothers releases have come out over the years, probably because it's kind of gotten to the public domain of just like alternate concerts than the ones that were released on the actual records from Warner Brothers and stuff like that. Um, But the golf thing always intrigued me because it was something completely different, and it was like, I wonder if he was good at this as a stand-up, you know? Yeah,
I would love to see,
yeah,
what he had done or where he was in the process with that. A lot of times when you come into these projects, they're either completely done or they're in absolute pieces,
yeah,
or not even in the same place. I mean, again, the Left Bank, the missing songs for the Left Bank were basically in another folder, three folders in.
yeah,
It took a, an obsessive fan like myself to say, okay, let me look through everything just in the odd chance that we find something and we happen to find
right,
that folder. So, or it may be on a tape that is somewhere deep in the family's archives and they never got around to scanning it.
right.
So,
Of course, even Dr. Demento himself, Barry Hansen, might know, but he wrote
mhm.
this on liner notes somewhere like the best of Alan Sherman, and it's like it just always intrigued me. It's like they could release this. What happened to it? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't have the contacts to, it'd take me longer to probably than you to find a contact on such a thing. You'd probably like, oh yeah, I can call up so and so and just ask him, you know. But
This one I have some context. I
yeah,
have this. So,
yeah,
that one I will look into and I will
yeah.
give you an answer.
Yeah. So those are two that just popped in my head because I was saying, this is an intriguing idea getting unreleased stuff released for non-Beatles artists, as it were. It's like there's a lot of stuff in the archive, but there is this big overall feeling of who cares, from a lot of people, I'm sure. But if you marketed it correctly,
Yeah.
you can make anything work, because I would even venture to say, since you said Marx Brothers again, they're getting more and more obscure every day. Not everyone knows who they are anymore. It's a shame, but true, so
Well, and the strange dichotomy of that, and I'm friends with the folks who run the Marx Brothers estates, we have found more material to the Marx Brothers in the last 10 years than we knew of in the previous decades. It's amazing what is still turning up.
Yeah.
literally every month. I will steer people towards my good friend John Tefteller, who was Groucho's archivist in the 70s. He is planning I think last time I heard, a 10 CD collection of just the Marx Brothers radio appearances in the 1930s.
Mm.
He has found endless, and he's still finding recordings.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe that 90 plus years later, we're still finding these things, but we are.
Yeah.
And there's more opportunity than ever to get these things cleaned up, digitized, and release them properly.
Yeah.
In some ways, this is the best time ever for this, and this, which is what you're seeing through releases by the Beatles and other. But at the same time, yeah, it's certain closing window in other aspects.
Yeah.
So, which is always my, I've worked with some acts that are like, oh, we'll get to it. I'm like, we're not all 18 forever
Yeah.
here.
Strike while the iron's
Let's
hot. Yeah.
let's do this sooner or later, and hopefully sooner.
Yeah.
So that's my one of my gentle nudges sometimes with some artists. We'll say that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's see. So, where are we? You said something about February release. Is that correct for this new
Well,
album?
Well,
Or
actually, the band's new single for the Strawberry Alarm Clock, "Blow Your Mind," is out this weekend.
okay.
Check it out at bigstirrecords.com.
Okay.
I will tell you that the band has been recording in the last week, finishing some additional overdubs. They will then be looking to mix and or master four more songs. At what point, when they are done with that grouping of songs, we will then look at working on the album. So they would like to have the album out sometime in 26. I'm not going
Okay.
to say
So
when because I'm
no
trying
formal
not to.
date yet. Okay.
Yeah, not a formal date. We have certain ideas. Okay, if we get the record done by this point, we'll release it here. If not, we will release it here. And
Okay.
I'm trying not to jinx anything.
Right. Well, good luck to you on the project, and
Yeah.
hope it goes smoothly. All
I'm,
right.
I'm excited, and I said hopefully I will be out in LA or California in the coming weeks to not only meet the band. I've actually not met them in person yet, so it's all been via email and phone and
Mm,
one Zoom. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm sure I'll be working on or trying to connect with some other friends while I'm out there. I will mention one project that I'm not involved with, but I'm really looking forward to, and I am friends with some of the folks involved with it. Is they've been working on a final album of Arthur Lee and Love recordings. Basically, it's a bunch of demos that Arthur did in '04 and '05, around the time that I photographed Arthur in Love. And a label called High Moon Records is
mhm,
already released one song in the last year, and they're looking to have it out sometime in 26. I
mhm.
will say that I've reached out to the label and said, if you need any help, give me a call, because obviously, but in the last few years has taught me to dream big. I'm the kid that has now worked with the Circle, the Left Bank, Chad and Jeremy, Strawberry Alarm Clock, the Marx Brothers, and a lot of other acts, and I've worked as a photographer with the Beach Boys and a bunch of other acts. Why not?
Right.
So, regardless of whether I get to be involved in that or not, I would love to see that release. I'm a huge Arthur and Love fan.
Hmm.
I count myself lucky to have seen him and Love twice, including a complete performance of Forever Changes.
Hmm.
There's a lot of good stuff coming in the next year, whether I'm involved with it or not. Hopefully, I'd love to be involved. Um, but I will tell people that this is a really remarkable year to come into, and again, go out and find this stuff. And if you haven't found somebody yet that's willing to take this on, find me or find somebody else, or go do it yourself.
Hmm.
Sooner or later, create what you love. That's what it's all about.
All right. Well, Daniel, we'll just wrap it up here, and I guess don't have an official release date on the album yet for Strawberry Alarm Clock, but it's coming in 2026. We'll leave it at that.
Yes,
But
yes.
how can people get in contact with you if they have questions about these or any other releases, or they just wanted to reach out to you to have you produce their project?
It can be discussed. So honestly, online is danielcoston.com. And I'm Daniel Coston on Facebook. On Instagram is Daniel Coston Photos. Really search my name. Around here in Charlotte, I always say Daniel, tall guy with a camera. I definitely look up mine. I somehow released 4 books this year, including 3 books of interviews and 2 volumes of just interviews with musicians from the 1960s.
Wow.
called My Flash on You, which is from a love song. So, you find my name on Amazon. They make great Christmas gifts or Christmas presents gifts for next year. And yeah, you can always find me, and my email address is on the website or my various websites. So, find me and come by and say hello.
All right, very good. All right, well, that wraps it up for yet another episode of the Fun Ideas podcast. I'm sure we'll have Daniel back. Maybe we'll be back with the entire strawberry alarm clock like we did the circle. No, who knows? Anyway,
It can be discussed. That is among my list of things to discuss with them, because that actually you bring up a great point, and thank you
yeah,
for that.
yeah,
Is ways that we and they can promote the album once the album is
yeah.
the release is imminent, and then imminent, to use the 50 Cent word, and then out. So we can discuss that.
Because I have gotten compliments on the circle one. They said, "Wow, you had the entire group on there." I go, "Yeah." It was hard,
That
kind of difficult to maneuver, when you're asking questions, but we worked it out. So,
it's like herding kittens via Zoom. So. But it's, I
anyway,
mean, those for me always the most special interviews. I will, not that I want to steer people away from this podcast,
yeah.
but if you look up the Beckys, you will find another podcast where we got all the surviving members together to
No, that's
talk.
fine. It doesn't have to
And
be here.
and and that literally was the first time I talked to them all face to face via Zoom. I had done everything via phone and email.
Wow.
And that was a really great, exciting night because it was also me as a fan saying thank you. And I think they were appreciative of what I'd done. So, yeah, please check that out. And then, yeah, there's definitely a lot coming in the coming year. So I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Sounds good. Okay, that wraps it up for another episode of Fun Ideas Podcast. I had my special guest, Daniel Coston, and we will see you next time.